I want to give an analogy of like orgasmic energy is the energy that we're born in. Every single one of us,
Okay.
because the egg chooses a sperm and there is this orgasmic energy that happens in that moment.
Right.
And so the moment of orgasm is a moment of creation. And so if we think of it from that point of view, it really goes into, well, what is it that I want to create today? What is it that I'm utilizing this orgasmic energy for? And so then we can transmute that orgasmic energy through the body and into the brain, which awakens latent genius in the brain. That's one of the tenets of Tantra, is utilizing that sexual energy to move it into the brain. So then we start to awaken to new ideas and awaken to different ways of being that can bring in more money manifestation if that is our goal. So yeah, so manifesting money, creating a child, a project, anything that you want to fuel. I think of it like fuel we're putting on a fire.
Yeah.
And so it's like, okay, I'm fueling this with a resource of orgasmic aliveness and life force. And that life force is really powerful. And so we can utilize that for manifesting anything that we desire.
Jaya is on the podcast for the second time, actually, because the first time was a really fast. I felt like it was.
We
like
had a quickie.
It was a quickie, exactly. It was a quickie interview. It was like 10 minutes with like Dave Asprey's conference or something, and I was like, oh my god, like you're so interesting on so many levels that I was like, I deep dived into your personal life because it was so fascinating. So I'm glad to have you back. Thank you.
Thank you. It's such a pleasure to be here.
It's a pleasure to have you back. And the new book is called Your Blueprint for Pleasure. And guys, I'm telling you, I love this book because this is not what I'm going to say to you. I was going to say it before we started. Everybody loves to be categorized. Like it gives people a placeholder. Like it's how you explain, like kind of like you kind of sexually compartmentalize how people think, or like what kind of you categorize like our sexual being in such a way where for me, I love that stuff and my friends love that stuff because you can put you can kind of like visualize or understand better when you have that type of thing. So you like knock it out of the park with that whole blueprint.
Thank you so much. And,
No, it's true.
It's interesting because I love personality typing tests.
Yeah.
So I was a little obsessed about it, like Enneagram and Myers-Briggs
Me
and
too.
disc profiles and astrology and just anything that can help me understand more about who I am and then help me understand who I am in relationship to another person.
Yes.
So that then my communication or my connection with them, and I'm really honoring who they are so that they can also honor who I am. And I started thinking, that's interesting. Like there's nobody who's done sexuality, like sexuality typing and creating a system for us to understand more about who we are when we're aroused, when we're turned off, and really looking at our superpowers and who we are as a whole picture in that. And
Yeah.
so that's when it started to I started really thinking about it, but being a somatic sexologist, I wasn't just paying attention to it from the mind, but like, what is the body saying? What is the body doing that's giving me clues as to what this might look like in terms of a system?
Well, I'm glad you just said that. Because you're very distinct there, like the somatic sexologist. So, describe to people what that is and what the difference is between a regular sexologist and a somatic, and how your origin story, like how you even became to be this person. Because it's, I think, like I said, guys, this woman is so fascinating. You have no idea. Just wait. So let's start with the basics.
So somatic means body-based, through the body, and sexology is the study of and teaching and education of sexuality. So a somatic sexologist is someone who educates us about our bodies, but I like to think of myself more from a holistic point of view, whereas like a sex therapist might just talk about sex and give you some exercises to do at home. I'm really looking at the full picture of someone. So what's happening on a biochemical level, what's happening physically in the body, psycho-emotionally, spiritually. And so we're looking at the whole picture and not just going, I think sex is something that's in the body. So we're not just going like, oh, sex is something here that we have to fix in the
Right.
emotional realm. And in therapy, not that there's anything wrong with therapy, that's part of the picture, but I like to look at more integrated of, well, what's the body actually saying? Because sex is something that doesn't just happen in the mind. Sex is something that very much happens in the body and with the senses.
Right.
And so a somatic sexologist is someone who's looking at that from that lens.
Do you go to school for that though? Like,
Yeah.
I mean, so like, is there a school for like regular sexology and then for like somatic sexology?
Absolutely. And just like in psychology too. So
Yeah.
there's like psychology courses.
Right.
I actually did somatic psychology in college as well.
Where do you even go to school for this?
So for sexology, I went to the Institute for the Advanced Study of Human Sexuality.
Okay.
And that was where I learned to do somatic sexology, or sexological bodywork, some people call it.
How long is the program?
It's 2 years.
Okay.
And so we did like a lot of, I don't know if it was 2 years exactly, but we did a lot of like prep at home and like, okay, do these exercises, do this with a partner. And then we would come in and we did 2 weeks of like at school for the actual time that we were there.
Wow.
But it feels like a lifetime that I've been studying this.
Well, how long has it been?
Almost 30 years that I've been
30
in.
years? So did you do that schooling like that long ago, or?
I did that in 2006.
Wow. Okay. So, because do you feel like also because of the Goop show, Sex, Love, and Goop? I watch your when you put them on the table and you go through the whole thing. I mean, did your popularity, like, did your popularity rise because people like even had a clue that this even existed? Did people even know that this even existed on a mainstream level? Or
I think that the show really elevated
Yeah.
the conversation, and I always say it opened up a portal.
yeah,
And so it was like somebody finally like cracked that into the mainstream culture and into the conversation. I had so many people, even within my own industry, who were like, congratulations, like somebody finally did it. Like somebody finally got this work
Yeah.
out into the public and out into mainstream and out into a conversation. Because I think we're ready. I think we're ready to actually have a mature conversation about sexuality.
probably now more than ever. I mean, because you said like 30 years ago. Like,
Right.
it must have been so taboo.
Very
back then.
different 30
Like
years
so,
ago.
what's the even thought process?
Yeah.
Like, I'm going to become an accountant. No, I'm going to become a sexologist. Like, how? Like, what was explain your whole origin story? Because I'm surprised it even existed.
Right.
Like as an actual course, even.
As you know, just looking at the entrepreneurship
Yeah.
journey. So when I was little, I was fascinated with sexuality just from a very young age. As a teenager, I would like go to the library, get the books, that I wasn't supposed to be reading.
Really?
And look at this. And I was obsessed with Dr. Ruth. I don't know if you know
Of course.
who Dr. Ruth
I was
is.
obsessed with her also, by the way. She was the one and only. Amazing.
And so I aspired to be Dr. Ruth
Yeah.
when I grew up. I was like, I want to be like that. I want to help people with relationship and sexuality and love. And that just seems like the most amazing thing to do. So I became that very early, like even with my friends. I'd be like, okay, hold on. Let me tell you the real down low on
Yeah.
sex. Like, it's not the stork.
Yeah.
Like, this is what
Yeah.
I grew up in a very Roman Catholic rural culture, and so it's
Crazy.
just like,
You must have been like such a black sheep.
I was the kid, don't let your other kids around.
Play around. I can play with this kid. Exactly. I can't imagine that the parents must have been like just trying everything to keep you as far away as possible from their families. Yes.
Yeah. I was quite even young. I remember. Very outrageous, and I still am. I feel like,
Yeah.
but it feels less outrageous now than it did
Back then.
Even in 2007, when my first book came out, the publicist told me I'd never be in the media. I'd never be in mainstream media.
Yeah.
And my partner always says, just tell Jaiya she can't do something, and then I will push against that
I
thing
love
that somebody
that.
says I can't do. So
Right.
I set out. I was like, okay, they said I'd never be on mainstream TV. And I have been on CBS daytime talking about female ejaculation. I was just on KTLA the other day, I have repeatedly
Wow.
talked about sexuality in mainstream media, something that people said I would never do, because I just was like, this is something that needs to happen. And no matter what it takes, if I have to learn different language to talk to people, if I have to
Yeah.
look a certain way, like I will do those things with also maintaining who I am. I think in that journey, I also did lose myself at some point because I watered down everything so much in
Right.
order
To
to fit.
placate everybody
Yeah, I
around.
used to
Yeah.
say, I'm Mildred in Milwaukee. I want to be able to reach Mildred in Milwaukee. That was kind of like an
Yeah. Yeah.
archetype.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. Yeah.
so,
Makes sense.
and I had people like say, don't dress sexy, don't do these things in order to fit in more and have your message out there. And I think in the last like even 5, 6 years of my career, I've just become more of who I am.
That's amazing. What do you think was the actual tipping point? That fact that you were being more authentic, or do you think the world has shifted and changed?
I think it's a combination of both things. I
Yeah.
think the world, especially women in wellness, sexual wellness is slated to be a $3.2 billion industry.
I know.
And so like that,
Crazy.
you
Yeah.
know, that sexual wellness, I think that women are really leading the charge in terms of, wait a minute, we want pleasure. We want to have this conversation. We want to talk about this because there's something empowering happen. There's a wave of empowerment happening.
Yeah.
And so we're having the conversation more. And then I also think that as I grew more into myself and loving myself, and as I grew more into wisdom, I think we all go through that
Totally.
from our 20s to our 30s, now in my 40s. It's like, okay, there's a grounded wisdom now that I think is heard just differently than when I was trying to get the message out there.
Yeah.
Now there's just a relaxation into the truth. And when people hear the truth, they resonate.
Yeah. How do you like? I'm going to get all into the book in a second, but I am actually very curious. Like, as as a career, let's say, right? Like, how do you monetize? Is it through one? Like, are you like a one-on? Do you go with people on a one-on-one type of journey with them, and like as their therapist or their, I guess, as their guide expert or a sexual? I don't know. I don't know what you call it, right? Like, I guess somatic
I
sexologist.
like guide is a really good
like,
word.
Like that's a good word, right? Is it through speaking about it? Like, how do you create a career around it? Like, has it changed? Like, even I'm curious, like at the
Absolutely.
beginning to how it is now.
Absolutely. At the beginning, my career was much more of tantra, like teaching tantra, doing like a one-on-one little tantra things for couples, or doing Friday night workshops. I'd started
Right.
off, I think those of us who do like bigger workshops now, it's like we started off with like 8 people in the room,
Wow,
like 2
that's-
people in the room. And
Right.
it's like, okay, whoever's showing up. And
And back then, it was like if you had 8 people, it's probably a lot of people, right?
that was great.
Yeah.
And especially in rural Ohio.
Even 8 people in there is a lot. It's amazing. You were a huge success, in my opinion. There. Wow.
And so that was the early beginnings. And so it was a lot of one-on-one
Yeah.
with clients. And I really value that time because at that time it was like I was learning. I learned from every client, even still today, every client that I have, I learn from. And so we started off there, and then eventually I started doing books and writing and speaking. We moved to Los Angeles, and I started
Yeah.
just building. I created an educational video series, so I started doing like videos. This was before all the online courses
Right,
and online
social
marketing.
media.
Yeah,
Yeah.
before all of that. So, standard like go in a studio and film and make a DVD, and so we had DVD products.
And who would sell it? You would sell it. Do you have a website? You had a website?
I had a website, and we would sell it through the website. And it's what's I think is fascinating about being in the sexuality industry is how much censorship and how much we go through. I cannot tell you how many times my business has been shut down.
Yeah.
Or how many times, we just can't even communicate with our customers because somebody somewhere got a little twist in their panties, and then all of a sudden my whole website's down and
Yeah.
closed down. We've been cyber attacked. I mean, it's like really intense in terms of just being able to do business in this industry, because we get lumped in with porn, or we get lumped in with trafficking, or we get lumped in with all of these other
Yeah.
things that are not what we're doing, but because we're so sex adverse and we don't know how to suss out positive sex education from these other darker aspects of sexuality, it's very hard to do business.
And there's also even now, there is such shame around it. Like it's there is taboo, like people are uncomfortable when you talk about it. And like, it's not something that you can easily it's not, you know what I mean? Like, it's just, there is a taboo. And even though we're better than we used to be with it, it's still something that a
Still
lot of
taboo.
people are like uncomfortable
and
and
we're
awkward around.
polarized on it.
Yes.
And I half expect the book to get banned, you know?
Yeah, I mean, I hope not, because it's I was like texting a bunch of my friends as I was going through it, even today, even last night, saying you guys have to buy this book, especially married people. I think that, like, this is what I was saying. We were saying, it reminds me of, like, the 5 love languages, that book that everyone's like, well, I like affirmations. I like this. This is like your sexual 5 love languages in a way. That's how it is, really. And, like, you're kinky, and this one is, I don't remember all of them. Hold on a second. I have them all written down and I can't remember them now, but energetic or sensual, like the categories, like, I have so many. I don't want to even ask. I'm going to get all ahead of myself. But, like, I think it's just really good. And I hope you don't get shut down, or I hope the book doesn't get.
The day the Goop
shut
show
down.
came out, this is a really interesting one. The day that show came out, our entire business crashed. We got shut down completely. Couldn't send out an email, couldn't deliver a product. Everything got just
really
swiped. And we had to rebuild everything from scratch. Our whole team was, like, up all night.
Are you kidding?
Trying.
Who shut you down? The government? Like, social media?
It's different things. In this case, it was our email delivery service that we had.
Like MailChimp?
A bigger conglomerate said, no, you can't send out any emails, because we had put the word pleasure in an email. Wow. And so, because we had put the word pleasure, it flagged something in their system. And they said, if you do business with this company, we aren't going to do business with you anymore. And so then the whole thing went up in smoke.
So what did you do?
We had to rebuild everything from scratch again. And so we went to, we go to other companies and things, and we say who will work with us. And then we find who will be willing to work with us. And, and then we also, there's just certain email providers that we cannot take any emails from, because they will flag us. And it's fascinating, because, like, it's me. Like, I'm not, like, naked.
Yeah, exactly. It's not even at all, like, untoward or anything. It's not at all like that. But I guess what you don't know, right? And so if you have a very myopic view of something, some people are like that, right? Yep. They don't want to know they don't want to even learn or be open-minded.
Right. It's like, no, your sex done.
Exactly.
We don't want to associate with that. And I've had that many times in my life. Even within sexuality communities, it's been really interesting. And so I feel like part of my role is just to be a phoenix.
Like, yeah. Exactly.
Okay, exactly. But I'm gonna get back up again. Like, no matter how many times you tried to burn me,
you're
coming back.
You're coming back, and you've come back, like, stronger every time.
Every time, because we learn and we go, okay, well, now what do we want to do with the brand? And we get to recreate, and we get to continually innovate. I wish it was easier. There's parts of me for sure that are like, gosh, I wish this was just as easy as, like, running a shoe company or something.
A technology company or whatever.
I remember one point in my career where I looked at one of my coaches and was like, why not herbs? Why sex?
Yeah.
Why can't I just go into, like, herbal medicine or something?
That would be way easier. But not as fun, I don't think.
Not as fun.
Fun.
Yeah.
So then how does it evolve now, like, over the evolution? So you were doing these workshops, and you do these, like, videos and making DVDs. And then what happens? Like, how do you start, like, evolving your brand and your business?
Mm-hmm. So I started doing, because I had the books, I started doing more media, and I did a lot of television and reality TV, living here in Los Angeles. So that started
What year
to
are we
get things
talking
out.
now, by the way?
This is like around 2008, 2009.
Okay.
So 2006 was when I had done that course, and then 2007 was the first book.
Okay. What was the first book called?
Red Hot Touch.
Okay. Did
So
that do
on
well?
Erotic massage.
Yeah.
Yes, it did very well.
It did. Okay.
It did.
So then people
It did.
were, like, interested even back then.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, it's interesting with books. People think, oh, I'm going to write a book, and then I'll be, like, famous, and I'll have all this money all these things, right? And it was really interesting and very awakening at that moment of, like, okay, I've written this book, and what is considered successful in the publishing company, even, like 10,000 copies of a book sold is really considered successful, or paying off your advance. And I think out the gate, we had like 40,000 books go. And that was like a huge success to the publishing company. And it was really big, because the average book, I think even now it's less. At that time, it was like 500 copies of a book. And now it's like 350 copies if it's self-published. Then that's like
Wow.
average.
Well, the red hot touch one, is that what it's called? Did you self-publish, or that like a
That was through a publisher.
That was through a publisher.
Yeah.
Okay, and
Yeah.
you sold that many, 40,000
Yep.
at least.
And it was in places like South Africa and like,
Wow,
they had
that
to
is
wrap
great.
it and things.
Yeah,
So
yeah, yeah,
nobody
yeah,
could
no
do
one
the
sees
cover's
it.
just like nothing. It doesn't, again, have anything on it. But
That's crazy
it's just-
though. But you got a book deal back then.
Yeah. Yeah.
So somebody was interested in like hearing about it. It's just and then it just kept on going from there. Then you did the media show. You did like
Yep.
media,
Lots of media. Yeah. And then there was
speaking. And,
lots of speaking. I started speaking for Tony Robbins, and that
Oh,
was
okay.
a big, also, that was in 2009. And then-
so that was a long time ago.
Yeah, yeah. And so that was and then I've come back for the relationship event to do that. And so that was also, I started learning more myself. I had a lot of shame about money. Like even just going into that environment, I'd be like, "Oh my gosh, like this is another world that I don't know," because I grew up in so much poverty. And to start to see like my own judgments about people with money, or to see how I just still had a lot of blocks. And so that was when I started to really do my money, like unraveling and belief systems, just like with sexuality, like the shame about having money.
Yeah,
Same thing
yeah.
about the shame about pleasure. I had to
another one.
apply it. And so I would have orgasms every morning just with like this, like, I'm going to like create more money. I'm going to create more financial wealth. And that's when I quadrupled my business. And so I was just doing some sex magic there.
What do you mean? Hold on. When you said orgasms, were you like being like literal? You were having
Literal
orgasms around like,
orgasms.
what do you mean?
I
Okay.
just like hold the intention that, okay, like this orgasm and this orgasmic energy is going to help me awaken more of my money, my wealth, my genius around business, and just help me awaken that. So I would donate my orgasm every morning to more wealth. And in that time that I did the practice, in the 4 months that I did that, I quadrupled my income. And part of that,
Oh my God. Can you teach me how to do that?
yes.
Oh my God. Okay. By the way, this is going to be the clip. You realize that right now. So you could actually have an intentional orgasm that you're focusing on, like, orgasm, please make me financially more free, or give me other ones that you can do.
Well, I want to back it up just a little
Okay,
bit so people
please. This is like,
understand.
okay, yes, please.
And so I want to give an analogy of like orgasmic energy is the energy that we're born in. Every single one of us.
Okay.
Because the egg chooses the sperm, and there is this orgasmic energy that happens in that moment.
Right.
And so the moment of orgasm is a moment of creation. And so if we think of it from that point of view, it really goes into, well, what is it that I want to create today? What is it that I'm utilizing this orgasmic energy for? And so then we can transmute that orgasmic energy through the body and into the brain, which awakens latent genius in the brain. That's one of the tenets of Tantra, is utilizing that sexual energy to move it into the brain. So then we start to awaken to new ideas and awaken to different ways of being that can bring in more money manifestation, if that is our goal. So manifesting money, creating a child, a project, anything that you want to fuel. I think of it like fuel we're putting on a fire.
Yeah.
And so it's like, okay, I'm fueling this with a resource of orgasmic aliveness and life force. And that life force is really powerful. And so we can utilize that for manifesting anything that we desire.
Wow. Okay. So tell me how do you do this? I want to know. Like, do you have to concentrate on it? You got to focus on it? Like,
Yep.
tell me.
Yeah. So the first thing is the intention. Okay, what am I manifesting this for? And then
Where's my pen?
I gotta take notes.
Oh my God. Okay. Yes. Okay. Intention.
And so
Yes.
intention, and then okay, I'm manifesting today. I'm having this orgasm today to build wealth. That was my big thing.
That was your thing. Yeah.
And so then I would then stir up arousal. So you need to then stir the pot, get the fire going. So
Yeah.
put the logs on the fire, really get something raging. So that would be self-pleasure. That would be, I do a bunch of different just pelvic floor techniques, because your erectile tissue is squeezed in between your pelvic muscles. And so you can just squeeze your pelvic floor muscles to start to create a pump of erotic energy. So a lot of times I can do this just, sitting here.
God. Oh, are you serious? Like right now?
Right now, I'm just pulsing my pelvis.
Really?
And so
Okay, keep on going.
pumping. And then once I build a little bit of energy, I start to feel that pulse or that aliveness in my pelvic floor. It's like, okay, now I know I have the pilot light on, the fire is going. And then I will breathe it up the spine. So it's a deep breath in to draw it up the spine with the intention. Again, I'm building wealth. So
Yeah.
deep breath in, drawing it up, drawing it up, drawing it up, drawing it up all the way up my spine. And I hold it in my head in the third ventricle of my brain. And I'm squeezing now all of my muscles. So squeezing my pelvic floor muscles, drawing my belly button toward my spine. I'll drop my chin, hold the breath. You can even look up with your eyes. So you get kind of like a tension also in the middle of your forehead. And that's creating hydraulic pressure in the spine and in the cerebral spinal fluid. So sexual energy, deep breath in, contracting and locking in all of those places while I'm holding the intention, And then I'll take a sniff of air, bring it to the top of my head, and then exhale it back down. And I just keep doing that breath. And then if the sexual energy starts to go down, then I'll do it over. I'll build it up again and do that over again. And so that is one of the ways. And there's science behind this. The pineal gland is putting hydraulic pressure on this. Joe Dispenza talks about this. And so I just utilize a lot more sexual energy than Joe does, where I'm like, let's get all this sexual fire going before we do this breath. But I've been doing that breath since I was 19. I just, at this point, was like, okay, now instead of like spiritual, it was always very spiritual for me. I'm going to actually apply this to wealth building and business building in my life. And so that was a huge turnaround.
Holy crap. So do you see a lot of entrepreneurs and a lot of people in the business space because of the fact that even this, that sound bite that was like 2 minutes, let's say, if I was an executive or whoever, or whatever, an entrepreneur of any kind or anybody like that, I would be like, oh my God, like I want to talk to her. I want to hire her. I want her to get me that place. Like, you know what I mean? That's because that's unique.
I work with a lot of entrepreneurs.
Well, yeah, because the truth is that's a very unique position. Like I haven't heard anybody in your space talk about that. That's crazy.
Have you read Think and Grow Rich?
Yes, I have.
Do you remember chapter 11?
Not right now.
Nobody remembers chapter 11.
I don't.
Chapter 11 is an entire chapter about sex transmutation. And nobody remembers.
I don't.
This.
Maybe I blocked it out.
Everybody blocks it out.
How is that possible?
So I always say, go back to Think and Grow Rich and read chapter 11, because that entire chapter is about awakening genius in the brain through sex transmutation. And I think a lot of entrepreneurs have a charisma about them. They have this sexual creative energy that they don't know what to do with or how to utilize. And so, Napoleon Hill was talking about it right there, sex transmutation, and how to then, instead of it going out, you're utilizing that to bathe your body and your brain in that energy, which then helps genius come forth.
Wow, this is crazy. And I haven't even gotten to my questions yet. I mean, this is unbelievable. Okay, so because people have to practice this, like just how you described it. Like I can't just go down and do that on my own and be, it won't work. Like how long is the process to learn these things? Like what is the process? Like when you go work with people one-on-one, like after one session, is it awkward for them? Like how long does it take usually to kind of open up?
Take a little while. I work with most of my clients now in my practice for a year. I learned, like people coming for a one-off session, sure they can get a lot, but I really wanted to make a relationship with clients and see them through an entire journey of their own sexual awakening. And so it's usually like they start to get it. It's kind of like learning piano or learning anything new. At first you're like clunky at it. At first you're like, wait a minute, lock the thing and do the what and breathe the thing. And so
yes.
And then there's something that clicks, and then it starts to become natural. Even like I practice this every single day. So every morning, my morning practice is that I do multiple different transmutation breaths that I've learned over my life. Cobra breath is one of my favorites from Absolute Tantra Kriya Yoga. And that one it's another similar transmutation breath. Everybody's sworn to secrecy. So you have to like go to a guru to learn it. 'Cause it's oral tradition, not written, it's not written down anywhere. And I was initiated when I was 19.
So you can't even do it now.
And so I can practice that at any time.
But you won't show me.
I can't show you, no, unfortunately.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
There's it's like an oral law that you cannot show.
Secret tradition that you can't learn it. You have to go to somebody to learn it who's been authorized to teach that. And so that was a part of my daily practice, was doing that kind of transmutation breath.
What's it called again?
Cobra breath.
Cobra breath.
And from Kriya Yoga and Absolute Kriya Yoga. And, there's multiple different kinds of cobra breaths. There's the breath that Joe Dispenza teaches, but, I'd add in the sexuality of that.
Right, exactly.
There's So anytime that you're moving sexual energy anywhere else in your body from your genitals, you're in a transmutation. And that's to take the sexual energy. You can transmute that into love. So another practice that I do every morning is called the Vajrayogini practice. And that's from Tantric Tibetan Buddhism. And what they do in that practice is they're transmuting the darkness of the world, the pain and suffering of the world, into unconditional love. And so they're utilizing a transmutation breath right up the spine into the heart, right up the spine into the heart, over and over and over again to transmute that energy into unconditional love.
Oh my gosh. So wait. So you're basically, I can only imagine what your morning routine is. Are you just basically like having sex and doing all sorts of or like having all sorts of different orgasms until like noon or 2? Like, what are you doing? Because we haven't even gotten to, by the way, this woman has, I think, you've got 5 partners, right?
I do.
How do you even have time? Do you have time to sleep?
Yes.
Like, okay, so what is your morning routine? Like, are you having sex with every one of them? Like,
No.
please,
No.
like, what are you doing every morning? I want to know.
Yeah. So my morning practice right now, and it of course changes. I think all of our practice change for what we need and where we are in our lives. It recently changed because I had a big experience during some of my travels recently that just shifted my consciousness in a very big way. And I came into an understanding of a new way to practice. And so through that, what it looks like now is I get up, I sit down at my altar that I have. It's a beautiful like space with a big kali and flowers. It's just a really beautiful, lovely, it right away makes me feel a certain way because I have an anchoring to that altar. And so I sit and I just get quiet and I wait. And then I say in my own mind, I have a little mantra that says, quiet the mind and open the heart. Quiet the mind and open the heart. And I just repeat that to myself until my mind starts to settle and I start to get more aware of myself sitting there. And then I start the Vajrayogini practice, it's actually only like a 20-minute practice. I do a short Vajrayogini practice, which is movement with breath and this transmutation. Every single movement comes with a transmutation into the heart. And so I'm coming back to my heart over and over again. And that is very pleasurable because you're doing pelvic floor contractions each time. And so it brings me into an orgasmic state.
It does?
And so from doing this practice, I start to go into this orgasmic state. And what's interesting that's been happening lately is there's this inner light that starts to shine inside of me. And people lately have been saying like, wow, like, what are you doing? What are you doing differently? I'm like, it's that this is creating a biochemistry in my body that's telling my body to be in health. It's telling my body to be in wellness. And so there's this inner light that shines because I'm doing this practice. And then I'll do my transmutation breaths because I'm getting into all this orgasmic energy that starts to get flowing. And then I'll transmute, doing various transmutation breaths for whatever it is in the world that I'm praying for or hoping for. And right now, I've been doing meditation for anybody who's suffering from a serious illness. And so then I start to just do, okay, this orgasmic energy is to help anybody who's going through a serious illness right now who is sick or dying and the people who are caring for them. And so I'm just transmuting all that orgasmic energy into something for the rest of the world.
When you say transmuting, what does that really mean? It's just like taking it within, like taking it in, or like what's the?
I'm taking it from what would be like we would call like a normal orgasm in the pelvis and like the genitals. So I've got that fire.
Yeah.
And then I'm moving it through my spine. I'm moving it through the rest of my body. Lately, it's been not into my brain. It's been into my heart because I'm focusing more on like the good of other people. And so I'm bringing it into my heart. Whereas, when we're talking about that transition in my business where I was bringing it all into my brain,
right?
Because I wanted to have the like wisdom and the knowledge to like, how do I grow my business now?
But you're obviously a person that's very like connected to yourself, and you. What about people who are like have like a disconnect? They don't have that same ability to kind of tune into what they are, what they need. Like obviously you do, and like that's amazing. But the majority of people I feel are blocked, so they don't even like. They can be listening to this and be like, okay, like,
wait a minute,
yeah,
what?
like where do I even start? Like it's like they don't even know. Like they can't even like feel anything. There's no sensation to even know the difference between a pelvic floor, going up the chain, all those things.
Yeah, I mean, I think easy wins is one of the things that I've always taught. So what's super easy to you? Is that you have access to doing Kegels
Yeah.
and getting a
that's easy.
toy and putting something inside of your vagina and like really squeezing around it and having that awareness? Do you have that awareness because you're more physical realm type of person? So
Right.
what's the access in? Is it emotional and you're having more of like a psyche emotional block around even like, oh, I just have so much resistance about sex?
Right.
Are you having a psyche emotional block to being in your body because it wasn't safe somewhere in your past, and then that's something to work with and look at. And so, or is it something in your biochemistry? Maybe you just want to go get your hormones checked and have your doctor go, wait a minute, oops, low testosterone, which we all can get low
Yeah.
testosterone. And then maybe your libido and drive isn't there because of low testosterone. So I think start with what's easiest and what you know and where you're strong
Yeah.
before you start to step out of your comfort level. We all have different levels of consciousness and awareness. And until we gain direct experience and access to a different level of consciousness,
Right.
start where you are and have compassion for yourself and where you are. It's like, okay, I'm at the baby step. I had a client who, I was working with him and he couldn't actually feel anything at the beginning of our journey together. And I just would go so slow. And I'd say, okay, I'm not going to touch anywhere in your body until you tell me exactly where you want me to touch and how you want me to touch. And sometimes that would take the entire session until he'd be like, okay, can you just put your hand in my hand?
Really?
And then I'd sit there and then the tears would come and he'd cry. It took me 2 hours just to say, can you put your hand in my hand? And we worked so slowly, just so slowly until finally he could feel.
And why was that? Or why is that?
A lot of times it's trauma. A lot of times it's someone who has some kind of something in their history that just creates the inability, that it creates a shutdown. It creates a block. It creates a pattern and a program. And the thing I like to say about trauma is just an adaptation to an adverse situation. It's actually beautiful that we survive through the things that we go through,
Right.
and that we can adapt so beautifully. The problem with the adaptations often is we grow past the adaptation and we're still utilizing that same adaptation because the body is still stuck in the trauma and in the past.
And you work on helping getting the body unstuck from that trauma, which is a great segue because I want to talk about you can choose what you want to do first, but there's 5 stages of sexuality and the 5 erotic blueprint types. And what I love let's go to the blueprint types. Okay. The 5 erotic blueprint types, because I was going to say, I have it in my notes here, like some of them some of the blueprints are kind of more gravitate towards people who've had trauma, right? Versus other people. So can you talk a little bit about all of those?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So energetic's the first one.
Okay.
And that's someone who's turned on by tease, anticipation, space, longing, yearning for something. Superpower is that they can have non-genital orgasms. They can have expanded states of consciousness. They can have orgasms without even being touched. The shadow side, however, is what you were talking about. Oftentimes it's the energetics who have some kind of trauma in their history that's unresolved. And so their system is so hypersensitive that now the too much, too quick, too fast type of sexuality will short circuit them and they'll dissociate out of their body. And their body starts to create up an armor. And that armor can get really thick because they don't know how to say no.
And so what I was going to ask you, is there a particular kind of trauma that's related to the energetic type of blueprint?
Oftentimes it's some kind of early development trauma, as the nervous system is regulating when we're young, as our brain is growing. It has something to do with that early childhood developmental piece.
But not sexual trauma, like they've been sexually molested?
It could be, but
Okay.
oftentimes it can also be like they're just born very sensitive. And our world is overwhelming. And so it's like, I see this a lot with men, very sensitive boys growing up. And then they're told to like man up. And, we've heard that story, boys don't cry kind of type thing. And it's in that sensitivity that then there just becomes this guarding from life. And that adaptation then becomes, I'm not okay in the world. I'm weird. Things are too much for me. And I can't ask for what I need because I am strange, so we start to go, let me just then armor up, armor up, armor up. And we're overriding our body's natural systems.
And that would be like an energetic type of person, right? And what's the most, okay, is that the most common or no?
Energetic?
Yeah.
Well, it
No.
depends on gender. So this is kind
Yeah.
of fascinating as we've had almost 3 million people, I think, now take the quiz
Yeah.
to find out their type. And women come up primarily, cisgendered women, heterosexual women come up primarily energetic, sensual. And then men, I think, is interesting. They
Yeah.
come up primarily across the board. Sexual is high in there, but it's not like I think people
Yeah.
think like all men are sexual. And that is a myth from what we're seeing. Now, maybe sexual men don't fill out the quiz. I don't know.
Yeah.
But we're seeing across the board that there's a lot more variety
in the men versus, okay, so tell me the other four, because then people can be like, okay, where am I and all that other stuff. I want
Great.
people to know.
So
So energetic is one.
Energetic is one. Sensual is the next one. And that's someone who's turned on by what we think of in the sensual world. So taste, touch, smell, beautiful environment, music that we love, that gets us into our arousal. The superpower of the sensual is that they bring the beauty to the erotic experience.
Okay.
And then the shadow side is getting stuck in your head and hypervigilance. So speaking on how trauma shows up, the hypervigilant nervous system. Now we've got a nervous system that's like, wait a minute, that thing in the corner isn't quite right. It's crooked. Wait a minute. Did I brush my teeth? Oh no, I forgot to call that person back. It's hard to relax into the sexual experience.
Yeah.
Whereas with the sensual, you really need to relax first and find that relaxation before you can really go into that experience. There just isn't a lot of turn on unless there's comfort, there's relaxation, there's safety, so that hypervigilance can calm down.
That's so interesting. And you said you can blend, right? You could be a little bit of both.
Yeah, you can be percentages of all of these. Sometimes people have 0% in some of them and really high.
Yeah.
But for the most part, I see that people have a variety of percentages, but there'll be one or two that are the
Dominate.
highest. And yeah.
What's the third one?
The third one's the sensual, and that's someone sexual.
yeah.
Sexual.
Sexual.
So the sexual is someone who what we think of as sex in our culture.
Yeah.
And so that is intercourse, orgasms, nudity. It's when we define sex,
Like the
it's what we
blatantly
think.
obvious.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's get to it.
Let's go. Yeah. Let's do it. Get it done. Get moving on. Yeah.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah.
And so the sexual blueprint, oftentimes they have sex in order to relax. The difference between the sensual and the sexual is that it's like, I feel stressed. If I have an orgasm, then I'll feel better.
Right. And that person doesn't normally have trauma in their life.
They can, and so
But not as
where I think the trauma falls into the sexual, if we're talking about the shadow sides, is that they get this limited definition of sex where their sexuality never grows past that limitation. And so that limitation is often, and they also don't realize that there's this whole other world of sexuality out there because they have somehow limited and it
Right.
hasn't grown. And I think that the reason why it hasn't grown is oftentimes because of some history or something or some way they've been told been told that they have to be, like in the Netflix show.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Exactly.
He here he is, and he thinks it's a sexual mask. It's like,
Yeah.
this is what I'm supposed to be as a strong guy, and the truth was actually that he was energetic.
Yeah,
underneath all
exactly.
that.
But like it took a long time to even get to that point, right?
Right.
Like knowing that, and the person has to be open to even wanting to find out, right?
Exactly.
That's the other thing. So then the other, okay, so that's 1, 2, 3. What's the other two?
So kinky is next,
kinky, yep.
and kinky's the taboo. So anything that you feel is taboo is
Yep.
kinky. And so that could be psychological, wanting to play power dynamic games, or maybe it's the sensation-based aspect of it, like the constriction of ropes or scratch or slap. These different intense sensations can come
okay.
into it. Superpower is that you can be endlessly creative. Lots and lots to explore within what we've deemed naughty
Right.
around sexuality.
Yeah, exactly.
And then the positive is really, it is this creativity. Another shadow is a lot of shame, a lot of that.
Why is there so much shame around that one? Around kinkiness?
I think it's because it feels out of the box.
Yeah.
So it's like, oh, why am I like this? Why do I like these things that feel so naughty
Yeah.
and not right and not okay? And my own partner, he was like, wait a minute. I'm kinky and I don't know why I'm like this and why am I like this and why am I like this? And he kept just trying to find out why he's like that.
Yeah.
And, he didn't have trauma or abuse or, like people
Right.
kind of conflate like, oh, you must have had some trauma in your past to make you kinky. And with any of these blueprints, it's not because of your trauma that you became this
Right.
way. It's just that what I've noticed in the shadow aspect, which the shadow aspect of kink is shame, it's because of the trauma of our culture that something in you isn't okay because you
Right.
like something that's outside the norm of what culture says is sexually
100%.
okay.
Because when I was going through them, I thought for sure that was going to be the one that had the most trauma based. And when I saw it was like energetic I was like, oh, I was surprised by that as well, just because what you would think what society deems,
Right.
different or traumatizing
Right.
or whatever.
Right.
Okay, and what's the last one?
So the last one is the shapeshifter.
Right.
And the shapeshifter is all of it. And so the shapeshifter is someone who has a full spectrum sexuality because they can speak all the languages. And the shapeshifter, it's interesting in their shadow, feels oftentimes like they're too much or too complex. Like people have said to you, you're just too much.
Yeah.
You just want too much. You take too long.
Yeah, everything is just like they're extra in every way.
One of these blueprints.
So, in terms of relationships, right? Because I know you talk about myths and all these others in the book as well, and like compatibility, for example.
Right.
Is there a myth then? Like some people are not just sexually like some. Is it just I'm just not sexually compatible with you, or can anybody be compatible with someone else? Or what's your opinion? Like talk about that.
I think one of the things that most people come to me for is because there's some kind of sexual mismatch in their relationship.
Otherwise, they wouldn't need you.
Exactly.
Right, exactly.
or sometimes people just want to come because they're like, we just want to have fun and we want to learn all the things.
Yeah, exactly. I was gonna say, it was like either one extreme. It's exactly.
Yeah.
It would be for sure. Like I'm just curious and I
Right.
want to know everything you know. Right?
Right.
Yeah.
But there is this aspect of, okay, if we're sexually incompatible, then we're doomed. And I like to say that's a mythology because really it just comes down to willingness to learn. Are you willing to learn a new language? Are you willing to take the time? Do you love your partner in such a way that you're willing to take and do the work to learn the skill sets that actually turn them on and to learn that language that turns them on? So it's not that you're mismatched. It's often that there's an unwillingness or a resistance in one person to actually do what it takes to learn what the other person needs.
But what about like pheromones and chemistry?
I agree with that too. I
know?
think that there's a difference between compatibility,
Right.
chemistry, and alchemy.
Okay. Talk about the differences. Okay. Yeah. Let's do it.
So if we're looking at compatibility, I think it's mostly in that realm, something that you can learn. So compatibility is like, I'm an energetic, you're a sexual. That can look like that's incompatible or a mismatch.
Right.
When actually you both have a lot to teach each other if you're willing to listen, learn, and expand.
Right.
So that's just like anything. And
If you're attracted to each other.
exactly. If you're attracted and you love each other.
Right.
And you're willing, that's easy.
Right.
Now
if
we
you're not
just learn.
attracted to them, then forget it. No one wants
Right.
to do anything.
So that comes down to chemistry. So
Right.
chemistry comes down to a number of different things, but one being pheromones. I don't know if you've heard of the t-shirt study where they had women who were on birth control and they smelled t-shirts and they would choose a partner that they actually weren't sexually, chemically,
Attracted to
because the birth control was messing up their ability to smell. And we have a nerve in our nose called cranial nerve 0 that goes straight to the sex centers of the brain. And that is reading the immune system of the partner for optimization of making a baby together. And so I joke with my partner. I was like, yeah, it was all about your pheromones. You just had a good immune system.
Yeah.
That was a match for my immune system so we can make a babies is all the only reason why I fell in love with you.
Right. And is that true?
I don't think it's the only reason.
Oh, okay.
I think that chemistry plays a role. But I also think there's something spiritual about falling in love and being attracted to people and what creates attraction. Maybe there's a karmic bond between the two of you. Maybe it's a trauma bond. Maybe your traumas are there to play out and work out together.
Yeah.
But, attraction is chemical, but it's also mysterious, both.
Yeah.
And sexual attraction. And then we get to alchemy. And alchemy is when you come together to create, and the Tantrikas did this, the Greeks did this, where utilizing the polarity of masculine and feminine energies to create an alchemy within us that then creates a new energy, which is an energy of unity, or like the manifestation. A lot of times that's when the sex transmutation would be practiced, is now chemistry fades.
Yeah.
But alchemy is when you're actually creating magic. And I like to say that instead of any of this chemistry or compatibility, I'm really interested in alchemy.
That's yeah. I mean, but how is okay? So that now that you said that, but you have 5 partners, right? How are you able to have? Do you have deep bonds with every one of them, or they all serve a different purpose? Like, explain this whole thing.
I'm a person who creates really deep bonds.
Okay.
So one of my relationships has been over 20 years.
Okay.
I have another that's 20 years. I have my partner Ian, who's here.
Yeah.
You've met.
Who is this guy?
He's been
Who's
16
this
years.
dude? Yeah.
He's been with me for 16 years, and we run our business together. So that's another business development, is
Right.
like running a business with your partner. And when he came in to be the CEO of my company, and how he's taken that into a phase 3 automation. So we have this, like the online marketing, and whole automated courses and all of that. And
He's doing that?
And that's him.
Okay.
He loves doing all those things.
So far we have 2 guys who've been around for 20 years, one guy for 16 years.
Yep.
Okay, what else? Who are the other 2? It's like a school of a whole classroom. Yes, it's crazy. I mean, I've got so many questions about this. Again, I can't help myself. Okay.
Well, and you might also find it interesting that one of my 20-year relationships is with a gay man, and so there's a whole talking about blueprints. Like, we met, we fell in love with each other, madly in love with each other, in the energetic blueprint, and we have alchemy, 100% alchemy. But when it comes to the sexual blueprint, we have no chemistry. But we have a 20-year relationship. And so the way, like, he always jokes, he's like, you created the blueprints just so we could explain our relationship to people.
Yeah. No, okay. I'm now beyond fascinated. Okay. So so do you ever have sex with that guy?
We've never had intercourse. And he jokes too, because he says, it's interesting, we don't meet in the sexual blueprint, but we meet in energetic and sensual. And so we have an incredibly erotic. He's like, that's why you call them the erotic blueprints. And I was like, oh, it like hit me.
Yeah.
I was like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I didn't even notice that before.
Yeah. Like, wait a second. So are you attracted to him in a different realm?
In a different realm. Like,
what is the realm?
Completely energetic. It's like a tantric. Like, we have been soul connected for many, many lifetimes feeling. Like the first time that we were doing a tantric puja together, and he kissed my toe. And the moment he kissed my toe, this energy shot through my whole body, went up my spine, out the top of my head, and everything became light, and it was oneness. And I was just shaking. He was shaking. He started weeping on my chest. We're sitting together, just holding each other, shaking. And he's weeping on my chest. And he's just like, I didn't know. My God, lifetimes of love. And that was the beginning. And so it started like that. So all he has to do is be near me, and I just start vibrating and shaking, and it's calmed down. I used to feel like I was going to explode every time he was around me.
But it wasn't a sexual thing?
It was an orgasmic, like, it wasn't sexual blueprint, and then like his penis was inside of me or anything like that. We weren't even naked.
But you were attracted to him.
Deeply attracted.
But not to have sex with him.
I think at that point in my life, I would have been like, I just didn't understand it.
Right.
I was like, wait a minute, I love you. You love me. Like, why are we not having sex? And it was so painful.
Yeah.
Really painful.
Because did he not want to have sex?
He did not. Because, he was confused just as much as I was. He's like, wait a minute, I'm gay. I'm like into guys, but like this woman, and so
he didn't know either what to do with it.
Exactly.
And so 20 years later, he's still with you?
20 years later, we just, but it took us a while to figure it out. It took us like 17 years really to figure it out. And the blueprints gave us a language. We're like, oh, we're energetic lovers.
Okay, wait. This is so okay. So, but wouldn't that be considered a friend? Like, isn't he a friend?
No, we went through this because he was like, he would use the word friend, and I get really upset. And I was like, it's like daggers. I was so dramatic.
Yeah.
I was like, it's like daggers in my heart. And he was like, okay, well, let me really look at that, because to him, lover meant we're having intercourse.
Yeah.
And to me, because of the blueprints, I don't need to have intercourse with you. We have the most amazing sexual experiences from running energy together, from moving. I mean, we go into these oneness states and like become God, and we're like in ecstasy together.
Are you kidding? Wait, what are you? I feel like
I'm like,
my
this
life
is better.
is so
This is better than intercourse.
It's unbelievable. I can't. So wait, does he live with you? Okay. So when you say I can never polyamorous,
Yes.
are you guys all living together?
No, we don't all live together.
Okay.
So he comes sees me a lot, but he lives in another city
So
right now.
does he
right
have-
now.
so he can
and we
have a
work
boyfriend?
together too. We teach together. We work together. He has a boyfriend. Yeah.
Okay, so so now I'm like kind of now I'm going to peel back the layers. So yeah, so he's one of the guys, but the truth of the matter is he is gay. He has a boyfriend. You have other people.
Yep.
Like technically, I can say I'm polyamorous because I have a lot of guy friends who I have deep connections with. Maybe maybe they're not putting their penis inside of me, but
Right.
we're still close friends. Can I
Do
say
you
I'm
share erotic energy with each other?
I don't know. You
Not
tell
that
me.
Not that that's the definition.
Okay, well, give me another. No one's kissing my toe, but give
Right.
me an example. Give me another example. But give me another
You
example.
and another lover. So I have another lover who I've had for 5 years,
Okay.
and I talk about him in the book.
Okay,
There's
which one?
He's Michael Ashley is his name.
I don't remember that.
And,
one. This guy I remember from the conference though. With
Yeah,
you.
this guy?
You travel with this one.
I travel with this one, work with this one. He's the father of my son, Ian.
Okay. Yes.
Yeah.
I
We're
remember
waving
this.
at
One.
him.
We'll get to him later. But go back to this one. I've already heard about this one, and I'll hear about him again. But
Yeah, Michael Ashley and I have known each other for 5 years, and we have he's sexual blueprint. So he's a shapeshifter, but he meets me in the sexual blueprint. So it's like, okay, I'm hanging out with Christian. We're not having an intercourse. I got all this erotic energy. I got to call up Michael Ashley.
and then you call this dude, and then that's your guy.
That's my guy. Yeah.
And does he live with you?
He lives, so we have 2 places. And
Where do you live, by the way?
We're in Boulder.
Still, okay.
And so 2 of my lovers have one house that's our downtown house. And then we have a retreat where we work and see clients. And so Ian and I stay at the retreat.
In Boulder.
In Boulder.
Okay, so you live with Ian.
Yeah.
And who else do you live with?
Just Ian right now.
Okay, but you have 4. Okay, but
And so 2 of them are downtown. And then one's in Seattle.
the gay guy is where? Where's the gay guy?
He's in Seattle.
Okay, the gay guy's in Seattle. Okay, Michael Ashley is downtown in Colorado,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Okay, but does Michael Ashley?
You're getting like the whole picture.
Oh yeah, I
today
want to
of,
know.
like-
I'm telling you, I want
getting all
the
the goods.
nitty gritty. This is what people care about, by the way. Forget about all the other. I can throw away the rest of my notes.
But
So
it's so interesting because so many people come to me because they're like, I want to open my relationship. Like, we want what you have, because there aren't a lot of successful models, long-term
No, there's not.
relationship models for people who are in open relationships that are doing this very successfully. And they always ask me, well, how are you doing this so successfully? And I say, well, the main thing is that we're all pretty awake in our consciousness.
yes, that's exactly what it is.
And we all have high compersion. Do you know this term, compersion?
No, what's compersion?
So compersion means that you are turned on by your lover being turned on.
Oh, I like that.
And so, Ian had to develop it. He didn't have that at the beginning. It was he would get jealous and it would be really hard for him sometimes. But
Yeah.
over the years, he's had to develop it more because I'm a very free person.
No,
And
really? You think? No, not at all.
and it was a part of contention for us.
Yeah, really?
But
Yeah.
but we worked through it. So
Do you have girlfriend, by the way?
the other number 5
Okay.
is a lover of Michael Ashley's, who I consider also a lover.
Okay, so do you call yourself fluid, bisexual? What do you call yourself?
Yeah, I mean, it's so interesting identity, this idea of like, well, what is your sexual orientation? What is your gender? Like, I think we're all in this place of exploring
Yeah,
a lot of
yeah,
that
yeah.
more. I think we're getting free, especially younger generations. It's like like they're just like, what's the big deal around this conversation?
Can I tell you, isn't that crazy? Because you and I, well, you're in your 40s, you said, right? I mean, back when, they don't even have relationships anymore. Like,
Right.
it's all just kind of like hooking up here and there. And like
Right.
the word fluid, fluid or bi,
Right.
it's like it's like a non-issue.
Right.
But I don't know if it's because where we live, like LA is like that. Or maybe
Boulder is like that. It's a conversation. Yeah,
Exactly.
it's more open and liberal around it.
But not in Florida, it's not like that.
Right.
Or Alabama, it won't be like that.
Right.
Right. So I think it's about, it is way more like than it was before. But I'm shocked at how it's changed with like, just in terms of like the younger generation. But so,
Yeah, so for me, I've really done a lot of exploration, just even like genealogy, bloodlines, ethnicity, like looking at identity from all the different spectrums that we create identity. And I came to this realization, like a shapeshifter,
yeah,
that I'm all of it.
you're all of it.
I'm all of it. And I'm also none of it at the same time, which may seem very confusing to some people.
Yeah.
But there's an everything nothingness that I've come to that gives me a lot of freedom, because then I can choose in the moment what identity that I'm putting on, based just like us sitting here right now. It's like,
Yeah.
okay, I'm Jaiya,
Yeah,
the
yeah, yeah.
author, the sexologist, telling these stories. And so this there's a freedom in, there's no identity, but I can put on any identity. And
I actually do understand what you're saying. What I find interesting is you said something that I think is like the most important in the sense of having this type of relationship, which is the other people have to be awakened, have an awakened consciousness. That's rare. And like, let me just say this. I don't know if it's going to come out right, and I may have to edit this out because I'm going to like make an ass of myself by even explaining it. But like, the guys that I would think who I would be, for example, attracted to would not be people who would be okay with or like have this awakened, would you call it awakened consciousness?
consciousness.
Yes. Like the people that I notice who have this awakened consciousness are people I would never be attracted to. It's like a very specific type of person.
Right.
Right. And the reason why I'm using myself as an example, I'm talking about me as like the mainstream girl, you know, like in that sense, you know, but who is very open-minded and very curious. So
Yeah.
let's say like that kind of person. So then you're like limited to, even if you're interested in having that type of relationship, your pool of people to pick from
Yes.
who would do it is very
It's small.
limited. Yes.
It's a small community.
Yes.
But it's interesting, you know, Ian, when he decided that he wanted to have an open relationship and be polyamorous after his divorce, he was like, okay.
Which one's Michael Ashley? Okay.
Ian's this one.
Ian's this one. Okay, sorry. God, it's like I have to have like
straight.
a syllabus here. Yeah. God.
And so, you know, he was like, okay, I'm going to do this thing, and I'm just going to be really honest with everybody. And honesty was such an aphrodisiac that before he knew it, he was dating 5 different women right out the gate. And I was one of them. And
Wow.
so he learned very quickly too, like a lot of them were not polyamorous. A lot of them they were willing to try it with him because they were like so curious and
Totally.
into it. But he eventually realized, okay, I have to date somebody who actually is in that orientation, you know. And
Yes.
people say polyamory for some people is a lifestyle, polyamory for other people is an orientation. And I feel like for me it's an orientation.
Yeah.
There's a lot of woman here that needs, and even like saying woman, it's like there's a lot of being here. There's a lot of.
But I
me.
totally get what you're saying, though. I mean, do you feel though? Okay, a couple of things just by who you are, like automatically, like, do you have any girlfriends, like friends who are just girls that you could just hang out with?
I do.
That you're not like having sex with.
I do.
You do.
And that's different. You know, like friend energy is very, very different.
What's-
'Cause
okay.
it doesn't stir anything erotically.
Right. So are you?
It's just like we're hanging out, we're talking, we're like, oh.
Right,
You know?
just like a normal friend, like a girlfriend.
yeah.
But like someone like you who's so acute and all this stuff and like awakened, I would like think you're pouring out sexual energy to everybody, and also because of what you do for a living and everything else. Like, is it hard for you to have like regular friends, like normal people that are just friends?
Yeah, I mean, I would say that throughout my life, that has been a challenge, just to have like a girlfriend that you're like hanging out with and doing,
Yeah.
you know, I'm going to air quote normal
Right.
things, because
But they don't want you near their husbands or boyfriends or whoever, girlfriends, whatever, you know?
Yeah, I mean, I even had that problem when I was in high school.
You did?
It was like, I was the girl. I don't know if you had this when you were in high school, but like I played spin the bottle once and kissed a boy, and then like I was pregnant the next day. Like the whole school had rumors, you know. Like,
Really?
I was that
So
girl.
were you considered to be like loose or slutty or all those things, or?
I just think there was a jealousy.
Yeah.
That happened with other girls because of
The energy.
freedom or the energy that I had. But I like waited to have sex. Like the amount of people that I've actually had intercourse with, because I have long-term partners. So like
You do.
people think like, oh, she must be having all this sex. And there's nothing wrong with having as much sex as you want to, as long as it's coming from a healthy place.
Yeah.
But I'm very discerning
Yeah.
about who I allow to be with my body. And so it was always just so funny to
It's
me.
like a disconnect for people,
Yeah.
for sure. Like, well, because I'm just thinking, like, sitting here with you, I can imagine, like, because also I think what's very sexy in general, with anybody, is when people are very comfortable in their own skin, right? And they're like, and they are authentic, and they're like, they are confident, and like you ooze that because of like everything we're talking about, like it's part of who you are. So I would imagine either you're having like, people are all very attracted to you. How would you have do you ever meet guys that you just want to be friends with and they're like, no, I want to have this with, or
It's actually the opposite.
Really?
It's really interesting. I have this theme throughout life, and maybe it started with my early lover from college who, is the gay man. But
the same guy.
Yeah.
Jeez, he's been around forever. I
so
forgot, 20
like
years.
so like this I have this thing where a lot of times people don't want to have sex with me. They want to love me. And I don't know what that is, but it's like
Really?
sometimes it's like a little like, come on, like let's have
Let's
sexual
do it.
blueprint, like
And they don't want to?
and they don't want to.
Why?
I've literally had people say to me, Jaiya, I don't want to do that with you. I really just want to love you and take care of you. And it's super sweet. And, sexuality is a really important thing.
And you're like angry about it.
I am.
Yeah. But do you feel like it's rejection to you? Like, do you find it like do you feel rejected when they say that to you?
I just have a lot of curiosity around archetypes with it for me, around why do people see me as this archetype of, I get a lot of like, you're a goddess and you're the, which is great. I love that.
Yeah.
And also like the goddess likes to be in pleasure. So
Right. So are they intimidated and scared?
That there's an intimidation, but I also think that there's a pedestalizing. And I oftentimes will say, I bleed. I just like a regular woman, I've given birth. I'm a mom. I have these other identities.
Right.
And in that, love to be fed in all of me, not
That's
just
so
a compartmentalized aspect of myself.
I wonder if the guys even know and recognize that they're even doing that to you. It's like a subconscious
Oh, I point it
thing.
out now.
You do? And
Like,
what do
okay,
they
this
say?
is a pattern. We're going to stop this right now. We're going to.
Really?
And it's something I talk about in the book too, is like, okay, what are the loops you're in? What are the patterns that show up again and again and again in your life? And this is one of them. It's like, okay, here's this pattern that's showing up in my life. I'm going to stop it as soon as it starts now and go, okay, if you really want to love me and you really want to be in relationship with me, then here's what I need, because I'm full spectrum.
Yeah. And then, like, okay, so then I was going to say, I'm talking about all of these different blueprints. Are there people that are just not compatible sexually because they're too far one way or the other? Like if one person's really hardcore on the energetic and the other one's on the kinky.
Yeah, I mean, if you're like 100% energetic and the other is 100% sexual, then I'd say, okay, your blueprint is showing you where you're limited. It's time to expand. And are you, again, come down to willingness.
Yeah.
Are you willing to learn a new, you only speak, American English. Can you learn to speak other language? Even if you can just say a few words, that's the beginning.
I guess my question, more is like, is sexuality fixed? Like, as you talk
No,
about,
not at all. Not at all.
like, can I, if I'm one of the blueprints, can I become another blueprint?
100%. So I think my friend Esther Perel, she says that there are multiple sexualities, not one sexuality. And I believe that we're always innovating our sexuality and we're growing in our sexuality. And so life changes, even just like I had a baby. How did that affect? Or I'm going through menopause. How does that affect my blueprint? I've seen a lot of people go energetic.
Yes.
As they get older, they get more access to the energetic.
Someone like Esther Perel, you mentioned her already. What's the difference between someone like her and someone like you, what you do? Because people think of her as the person, like the go-to, let's say, for sexuality, right? But you guys are so different.
Yeah. Esther and I, we love doing things together because of that, because she really has like the psychology and the psyche-emotional realm so deeply. but I have the somatic. And so to bring her teachings even like into the body and how are we practicing some of the things that she's talking about, I tend to bring things into practice and into, okay, well, now let's experience it, not just talk about it.
Right. That's a good.
And she talks about erotic blueprints too in her book, Mating in Captivity, but different. Hers is really a blueprint created upon, I think she says, show me how you were loved and I'll show you how you love.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's a great, I like that. Yeah, she does do that. That's true. Oh, and I also, not to keep on like dwelling on or beating a dead horse, but like with Ian and all your, is Ian do you have a main lover and the rest are kind of just, like kind of ancillary, or are they all equal? Do they all have lovers too?
There are many ways to practice polyamory.
Okay.
And so
I'm more interested in your
really,
polyamory.
It's really about finding out what works for you. And so what I've discovered over the years, there's been moments where Ian was my primary relationship. And that's because we were raising a young son. And it was like, okay, we need to just really be together and raise this baby and do that together.
How
and
old is
so
your baby now?
He's 14 and a half now.
Okay.
And so then, and then also that like felt really good for both of us. Plus we lived with one of my other partners who has been around for 20 years, John, who I wrote my first book with. And so
did you mention him already?
yeah, I did.
Which one was John?
John, 20 years. And he lives with us in Boulder.
And
we
he's
lived
the
together
nanny,
for
right?
Yeah. He
I remember
takes care of
this.
our son. And so for 12 and a half years, we lived together, all three of us. And we were raising our son together. And so that actually is amazing because it's like really harmonious because I could work while John has been the one who mainly takes care of our son. And so both of us could like really do business and do other things while we had somebody. I mean, I'm like, how do single moms do this? I have three,
I know, right?
Like I have a community of people, a whole constellation of stars here.
Can you believe it? Like,
Yeah.
It's amazing to me that they can do. I say that to myself all the time, how people can do it as single moms. I don't
Yeah.
get it. It takes literally a village. I mean,
does.
literally. Do they have relationships like Ian and John?
So not a sexual relationship with
Okay.
each other. So, and that's also interesting is like, how does everybody interact together? And so in the last few years, I've really come away from like having a primary partner and much more into this idea of a constellation, that we're like a constellation of stars.
Yeah.
And each constellation has its point in relationship to me and in relationship to each other. And so, yes, they all have other lovers. Yes, they all, and we're like a community, like we practice more. Sometimes people call it kitchen sink polyamory. And it's like where everybody knows about each other. And we are like a community who supports us. We're going through a really rough time with one of my lovers, who's really ill right now. And everybody has been so beautiful. Like people flying out to be with my son, people, coming into town to be with him while he's in the hospital while, I'm here doing interviews, like those kinds of things where
wow.
one of them's cleaning the house, like everybody is coming together because we are like a community who has so much love for each other. And in that, there's no hierarchy of my love. It's not like, oh, I love you more than I love you. It's very much just, I love all of you. And I love all of you equally. Now, do we spend equal time together? No. And there's reasons for that. Some people live farther away, or it's just the way that things work because they have other primary partners.
Right. So because they have primary, you're like a secondary or tertiary or whatever partner
In their world.
In their world. How about your son? How does he react to all? Does he know what's going on? He's 14. He's not young, but he's not old.
Yeah.
What does he think? What does he feel?
He's being a 14-year-old. He's like in his
So he's like a
teenagers.
normal
He's like, whatever.
Yeah, he's my mom.
I'm just gonna go play video games, and it's his life. Like he grew up.
Yeah.
The day he was born, John cut his umbilical cord, and Ian was there holding me the day he was born. And so, Christians are my gay lover. He is like the cool uncle who plays video games with him and, takes him on trips and that kind of thing. And so he gets to interact with all these people. He's being raised in a village. But, again, like age appropriate sexuality, we're not like sharing all the things that we're doing.
Yeah.
It's more just like, and he'll roll his eyes at me because I'll say, my friend, blah, blah, blah. He's like, Mom, I know who they are.
Yeah.
You don't have to say friend.
I love that. That is so funny. Because like, oh my gosh, because he's like a 14-year-old kid.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
All he
Okay.
cares about is who's going to teach him how to drive. And like, you know, that
Yeah,
he
like he's like a
gets,
normal kid.
yeah. And he said, and I always tell him, I'm like, what's it like to be so loved? Because
Oh,
he's an only child and
yeah.
he has
Oh wait, you
who
have those
love
two.
him.
Well, wait, you have two that live downtown, and you and you and Ian live together
yeah.
with John. Is John still there then? Oh, so you still live with John and Ian, and then you have those other two that come all the time up and down.
John and Michael Ashley live in the same house, and then Ian and I live in a house. And then Michael Ashley's lover is also in town.
Okay, who's the other one? Holy shit! Who's the one who's in Seattle? Exactly. Who's
Seattle,
in
it's
who's in
Christian.
Seattle? Oh,
Christian.
Christian
Yeah.
is the gay one.
Yeah.
Got it. Okay. God, do you know this? I mean, it's hard to keep up with all this. And are you inviting? Can you have more? Are you not looking?
No.
But do you want more people?
No, I feel really content with our family. You know, to me, it's a family. You
Yeah.
know, I feel really content, and
What do your
we're
parents
also
think?
very close. And I mean, my mom's a hoot, so my mom's like, yeah,
Really?
my free-spirited daughter.
Really?
Yeah, oh yeah.
I
mom's a
love
hoot.
that. So she thinks it's like great, the greatest thing since
yeah.
sliced bread.
Yeah.
I mean, and then how do women respond to you? Not friends. I know you have a few friends. When they meet you, like when you go to things or like, I don't know what you do for, what kind of stuff do you do when you're not having sex? Like, when you're not having an orgasm, when you're not having sex, what do you do?
You know, it's normal. Like hanging out with my son. He loves to roller skate. So like going to the roller skating rink or going out to dinner, hiking. I swim in the lake every day.
You do?
You know, just those just beautiful
Like you're like a
life
regular
moments.
person, just
Yeah.
having lots of sex, basically.
Regular person, just having lots of sex, traveling around. I work a lot, you know.
You do?
I work a lot with clients, and
So you still do a lot of client work. Like what does it look like now? Are you traveling a ton, like to
Yeah.
the most rich and famous people in the world because they all
Yep.
want to up level their everything in life, right?
That's a lot of it. A
Yeah.
lot of it is I always have worked with celebrities. It's really interesting. Even when I was in Ohio, I had like Olympic athletes and celebrities and people who came to see me. And maybe it's just something
How do they find out
people
about you?
feel drawn to me, word of mouth,
okay.
internet. And but then these later years, we do a lot of travel adventure, which is really fun, of just going, and we choose like some amazing location and we travel for like 3 days to a week, depending upon the client where I'm at and working with them. And we just have an epic experience learning and at a beautiful location and doing a lot of transformational work as well, you know, because I'm really there to help them transform into whatever it is that they're seeking to transform into. And so
Do they have
that's
sex with
really
you?
amazing.
I know it sounds
No.
crazy. I know it sounds like a crazy question, but do you have to demo
No.
sometimes how to do this
yeah,
stuff?
I mean, like, so you saw the Sex, Love, and Goop demo.
That's what I'm saying, yes.
Yeah, that kind of stuff of like,
You're like right in it. You're like you're involved.
yes.
You know?
Yeah. I have always thought of myself as someone who's teaching from my own body. Like I call it teaching from the table. Like I'm teaching from what's happening. And so a lot of people are interested in the energetic and learning how to do all the fun energetic stuff.
Totally.
And so, you know, you see it on the Goop show there with Ian and I practicing that.
Yeah,
So
I do.
And so Christian, Ian and I travel together a lot, and we go because Christian teaches with me as well. And so we go, and it's really interesting to see because a lot of times people want to see how do we live our life because they want what we have, and they see something that's a desire in them of something that's possible in terms of love, in terms of relationship. And so I pretty much like live with the client so they can see like, this is how we live. This is how we are.
Wow. So they hire you basically just to live with them technically for like a week. Mm-hmm. And so they can kind of like,
Download it all.
yeah, watch you.
See how
In the
it
wild.
goes. Yep. Watch me in the wild.
Watch you in the wild.
While we're doing things like unraveling their trauma, helping them get through the psycho-emotional charges that are there, the loops and patterns that they're in, you know, unlocking orgasmic possibilities, doing blueprint work. all of this.
Can I ask you, and you don't have to answer, I'm curious though, because I'm sure people are going to be listening and be like, hey, how much would it cost to have you come along for a week to some great tropical island and watch you for a week? How much would it cost? Like watch you in the wild, like you and Ian and John and
in the wild.
like that's what it is though, right? Like and learn from you, really.
Yeah, it's really interesting because I mentioned how I made that transformation in my relationship to work from like one-offs, like a week or like even people coming in for a few hours to work with me, to now everybody works with me for a year. And so I see it as a mentorship. And so you're really diving in deeply into a mentorship.
It's a year.
It's a year-long process. And it usually takes 10 months where that radical transformation starts to happen. You said like, well, how long does it really take to get this? It's like, okay, now you know how to play the piano.
Yeah.
Now I can go, you got this. And it usually takes, it's that 10 mark. I love October. It's like my favorite, because I always start everybody in January. And I love October because when I get to October, that's usually when they start to like pop. September,
Really?
October. And I know like clockwork, my clients are going to start to have these big wins. And then all of a sudden they've like let go of the pattern that they've been in for 10, 20, however long they've been together.
Yeah.
Sometimes their whole life they've been playing out this pattern. And now we've finally broken free of that pattern. And now we're in a different game. Now we're playing, it's, we liken it to video games. It's like now we're in New Game Plus.
Yeah.
Now we're,
That's amazing.
We got through this level and now we're in a completely different place. And so that year-long process is anywhere from $250,000 to $1 million to work with me now.
So because also it's also going to be, but because you can only take on, how many people can you see at a time?
Yeah, I only take on, usually my clients stay with me for many years because we start to form, just like they've been through this process with me for a year. Oftentimes I'm supporting them through some big crises because sex is this place where we keep all our hidden stuff.
Yeah.
And so,
that's right.
It's like, it's really intense work. It's not like for the faint of heart. It takes a lot of courage. And so once I've held somebody through that year, then they're like, okay, now next year is going to be the fun year.
Yeah.
Like now. And so I've had clients who stay with me up to 8 years, and so there's not new spaces oftentimes because I only take on 2 or 3 couples a year.
Yeah.
In singles, sometimes it's a single person. And so in that, unless somebody falls off, then I have an opening usually for somebody to come in new.
Right. Because like I was going to say, because people must feel so incredibly attached to you after, because like even you're like going into their most vulnerable places and then making them feel like they can be free.
Yep. For the first time maybe in their life,
Exactly.
they feel free to express fully who they are.
Like even watching the show, and I just keep on thinking about that one situation on the table, whatever, and like I was uncomfortable even watching that situation because I can imagine, like I would be so uncomfortable in that situation, right? But like you were a pro, like I would like what you did it so well, right? Like you make the people feel so comfortable. Like you obviously have a gift. There's not many people I think who do what you do, but like. I mean, it really is like you're so unique. You really are. Are there other somatic sexologists like you? Even I don't even know if there. I mean, I don't know, but
there are other somatic sexologists, and we've trained 300 coaches.
Oh, they're okay. I was wrong. I guess.
who work as erotic blueprint coaches, and they're going to specifically work as erotic blueprint coaches.
Okay.
However, what I do actually is quite a unique because I'm bringing together all my gifts from the last 30 years. You know, it's like I love the story of this. There's a story in business circles of this guy who was like going to get his car fixed, and the first mechanic, tinkered a little bit, took a day or two to get a part, put the part back in. The guy gets his car back in 3 days, and charges him $1,000 or something like that, and the guy's like, okay. And then like a few months later, the rattle comes back in his engine. He's like, oh, and he takes it to another mechanic and kind of the same thing. Like this mechanic even takes a week and charges him a little bit more. He's like, okay, now it's finally fixed. And then he goes to this older mechanic who's been around for 40 years, who he hears is like a really genius at this. And the guy looks under the hood and goes, kink, kink, and says, okay, that's $10,000. And the guy's like, what? $10,000? All you did was like hit the thing. He's like, yeah, but it took me 40 years to get the wisdom and the knowledge to be able to just go tink, tink.
Right.
And make that thing go away.
100%. Exactly.
Right.
And you're the tink, tink person. That's amazing. So people could take a course and have clients, but Do you have a whole, I guess you have a program, right? Like
Yeah. So that's the thing that Ian built in our business.
Oh, that's right. Okay.
Was that
Okay.
he really built the online portion where people can go now, so that's more accessible. You know, not everybody can come work with me
Yeah.
at the rates
Really?
that I'm at, right?
People don't have $1 million in their pocket, really? I mean,
So,
maybe some people, but listening to this, but
that was
majority.
a really interesting choice, just in me working through my money stuff of
Yeah.
like being able to say like, oh, this is what I charge.
That's
right?
why I asked you.
Without any like shame or anything, you know, to just be able to matter of factly say, this is what I charge. And part of that was I realized that if I could work with people at that level, those people impact so many other people. So I'm mostly interested in working with people who can make a big impact because I see the relationship and the mentorship as a way to impact massive people because I'm working with those influencers.
Yeah.
And then
If they talk about you.
if they talk about it. And a lot of them run companies, and then how that trickles down into their company
Right.
and their dynamics, even because they grow so much that then that trickles into the world in a really big way, even where people put their money.
And they don't feel stuck, and therefore they'll be better leaders and different leaders.
Exactly.
But I only asked you that question because you opened me up for the ability, because you said that you did that orgasm at the beginning to have to make more money, to be more
Yep.
comfortable financially, to do all that wealth stuff. So I wanted to see if you were going to say how much, and you were like, no, you were fine with it. And I find
Yeah.
it really interesting because, especially on this podcast, right? Because a lot of entrepreneurs listen to this, whatever. People are so uncomfortable with talking about how much money they make,
Right.
what their money, status is. They'll talk about everything else, and if you say, how much does that cost, or
Right.
how much do you make for that, or how much is that
Right.
course,
Right.
they will talk around it for like a half an hour because they don't want to like talk about the actual like money figure. And I
Right.
always find that to be so telling
Right.
and weird. And like here, because if the camera was off, or this was off, or whatever, the microphone was off, they would tell me.
It's like talking about sex.
That's what I'm saying. It's the
Right.
exact same thing. That's what I was
Right,
saying. It's
right.
like they are the two things that people are so awkward and uncomfortable. But once you're free with it, like, who cares? Like, I
Right.
don't care. You ask me, I'll tell
Right,
you.
right.
And I just found it very interesting because you said that you were free with it, and then you obviously are, because you didn't beat around the bush. It's around 6 figures, 7 figures. I don't know. Like, you went right. You just
Right.
told me.
Right.
And now people know.
Right.
And it's not weird because you just said it.
Right. And then the beauty of it is, okay, just like owning it then gives other people permission to own it too.
Yeah.
And we all start to elevate our abundance. Because why not?
I never understand that. Like, why are people so weird about it? Like,
Yeah.
I know, like, I'm not going to be able to pay $1 million for you. Then in my head, I'm like, what do you get for 250,000 that you don't get for $1 million? So I want to know, is there a package? You get like a package for 250? Is there a package for 500,000?
Yeah.
Is there actually a package?
I don't think of them as packages and programs. So this was interesting
Yeah.
evolution in the business.
Okay, tell
even,
me.
like, so I went from like a doctor, right? Like, it's like a charge hourly, or
Yeah.
a therapist, right? You charge hourly, like it's this much an hour. And then somebody in business really shifted my mindset. And
Okay.
they were like, "Oh, you should offer packages and programs, because
Yeah.
then it's like a." And I remember that day because I wanted to throw up. The first time I ever made an offer, I was like, "Oh my god, I'm going to throw up! I'm going to throw up to say this number." It was $7,999 for my package.
Really?
That I had. It was like one immersion day where people could come work with me, and like a number of calls plus a workshop, something like that.
Yes.
And I was like, oh my God, I'm going to throw up. I'm going to throw up, because I had so much money shame and just so much stuff tied up. And like, I can't ask for this. Like, who am I? Like, all the worth and the value
Yes.
stuff.
Imposter syndrome stuff. All of
Exactly.
it.
Can I really deliver? Like, all of that. And then it went from that to 15K. And I remember that day. I'm like, okay. And then I offered it to a client. It was like 15K. And they're like, no, we insist on paying you 20. So my clients started insisting on paying me more because they knew I was undervaluing
Really?
my own work. And then I went to 6 figures. The first time I offered, it was $100,000 to work with me for a mentorship. And when I went to there, it was interesting. The person who took that, and we had 4 people apply for that very first offering. And she said, I was waiting for you to value yourself enough to raise your rate to 6 figures.
Really?
Otherwise, my husband wouldn't take it seriously.
Seriously?
That was like such a learning for me. I was like, all this time I could have just been.
I know you could
doing
spend a
six
million.
figures.
Exactly. That is so. But there is a psychology. There's a whole psychology behind that too, because people don't think you're valuable unless you are so expensive.
Exactly.
It's like that's like, and like, welcome to where we are in the world, like in
Right.
LA or like these places
Right.
where you have a lot of money or wherever.
And it's
like,
perspective too. That was
Totally.
something somebody else said to me who, she had, it was very actually early on and I just didn't take the lesson. And she said, it's all perspective. Money is all perspective. And then I realized like I can charge whatever and it doesn't matter. And then and the thing that I really love that I love to do. And again, this isn't like because of shame or to justify, but this is because I like this model of business, which is I love that, okay, I have these rates, but then I can take on so many pro bono clients.
Right.
And
people, you take pro bono?
I do. So I just take on pro bono clients. So for every immersion that I do for a paying client, I do a pro bono client. And I get so much value out of that. Plus the clients who are paying me know that that's happening.
Right.
And then they're like, we're supporting another person to have this transformation along with us. And I try to choose somebody who's having the same challenges.
Oh, that's a good idea.
Yeah. So that I love that aspect of my business that, okay, I get to, like, it's like Christmas for me. I get to choose anybody anywhere in the world that I want to work with who has some challenge that they're struggling with that could use the expertise that I have.
And what is the most common, and then I know we'll wrap this up. I just want to know, because I want people to feel like they can relate. Like, what is some of the most, a couple, okay, that two of the most common problems that you think people really have that I want people to know so they don't feel like they're alone?
This is something I talk about in the book as well, which is that we get into an unconscious pattern with our partner and we run the same racket over and over and over again. And we're not aware that we're even running that racket.
Yeah.
And so we're playing a game, essentially, that we're stuck in a loop. And I don't know if you've ever felt like that. Like, oh God, here I am doing this again.
Yeah. Doesn't everyone feel that way? I feel like that for sure. It's like this, people get into a sexual routine though, right?
A sexual routine, but also your psyche-emotional dynamics around it. It's like,
well, that's what I'm saying. Like how do you break that loop though? Or how do you break that room and that pattern?
I think the first thing is just to become conscious of it. So you become conscious of the loop that you're in. And then you're like, okay, wait a minute. If the moment I become conscious of it, I can choose not to do that, then that is a moment of choice.
Right. Okay.
And Ian and I laugh too, because we're like, oh, I'll even say we're playing the game again.
Yeah.
We're doing the thing.
Oh, really? Even you get into the loop.
And we'll laugh. And then it gets less and less, like each time we do it. It's like, I think last time it was like 3 minutes. We're like, oh, we're doing the thing. Okay, do we want to keep doing the thing? Hold on. Blah, 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 blah. And then we do like a little mini, and we're like, okay, wait a minute, we're done with this.
Really?
Stop.
I love
but
that
it used to be a week,
though.
you know?
Yeah.
Of course. It's
you
still
are
arises.
like a human.
I definitely human.
You're not just someone on a pedestal. Okay, what's the other one that people do a lot?
And then I think the other one is just we get caught in our blueprint and don't want to go out of it to learn anything new. And learning something new, especially in sexuality, feels threatening to our egos, especially for sexual blueprints, I will say. They're like, something's wrong but everybody else was fine with our sex life, or they really hate to hear that there's something wrong with their sex life.
So how do you tell somebody in a way that would make them actually be open to being willing to be open to?
Yeah, I think there's a conversation there of there's something that I'd love to talk to you about. You're not in trouble.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Because as soon as somebody says, I want to talk to you about something,
exactly
there's this feeling like, oh God, I did something wrong.
Right.
And so you're not in trouble. And it's just something that has come to my awareness and I would love to share with you. Do you have time now? Would you like to schedule a time? And what would have you feel safe to have a conversation about sexuality?
Yeah, but you're saying it so confidently because it's like, yes, I understand, but that doesn't make the other person feel less threatened though, right?
Yeah, I mean, sometimes their threat can come up, but if you offer to them what would have you feel safe here, then they get the opportunity to say, well, I can't do this right now. I'm concerned. Is there something I should be concerned about? Or, whatever they're having.
Right.
No, there's just things I want to communicate with you. Or I tell people all the time, blame it on Jaya. like, I heard this woman Jaiya on this podcast.
Yes,
Habits
exactly.
and Hustle, and like,
and she said that's 100% true.
And I took this quiz, and like, I'm
I
excited about that. And so that's another way. And is there anything you need to feel safe to have a conversation about this, or would you be willing to take the quiz and find out more? And that tells you something just about where they feel and how they feel safe.
I think that's like, I think starting with, do you want to take this great quiz? Like that's what I would start with, right? Because I think the quiz is a great, what do you call it? Just like not a conversation opener, not really, but like it's a
icebreaker.
Icebreaker, exactly. Jaiya, I'm so happy you came on this podcast.
I'm so happy to be here. Thank you so much for really digging in.
No, thank you.
I
I really love this. It's like, and I really, really appreciate your earnest and honesty. Like I really do. I like I said, like you weren't like trying to mince words and like kind of skirt around things. And like I'm telling you, that's like every podcaster's dream, right? Because like I said, once like the conversation usually when the mic's off is very different when the mic is on, and you just you didn't change.
You.
So thank you.
I was saying to Ian, sometimes I feel like my transparency, like I don't have a filter.
Good.
And sometimes my transparency is an amazing thing because it gives people lots of permission. And sometimes I'm like, I'm really ballsy, like really courageous.
Yeah.
And then sometimes I'll be like, what did I say?
Yeah, and like you'd be kicking yourself, like, what the hell did I say that for?
Right. But then I also have this thing of like no regrets. Like it happened, we said it, and I don't regret what I said because there's somebody out there who needed to hear exactly what I said and exactly the way that I said it. And if it helps one person, then it's always worth it.
Yeah. Well, I think you're great. I think the book is great. It's called Your Blueprint for Pleasure, Jaya, like Madonna, Jaya. It's a great book. Find out your erotic types. Everyone should take the quiz, you guys. It is this book, the quiz, it's great. It's really well done. And
so glad you liked
so
it.
informative. I love it. Thank you. And good luck on the book, the book and the tour. I'm sure you're going on a whole like podcast tour, book tour. Where can people find you? If anyone wants to know more about your work, where would they find you?
Jaiya, JAIYA.love, LOVE. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, no, you don't have Instagram, or you do, but it's not.
I do.
you're not
I'm also
big
on
on it.
Facebook, facebook.com/Jaiya. You can find me there too.
Facebook, what are you, like 150?
I am 150. Like I still do Facebook.
You do?
Yes.
Yeah, like I know that because I know you're not on social, like you're not on Instagram as much as like other people.
Yeah.
Which kind of I think is actually, I like it personally.
Yeah, I just don't resonate with social media
Good for you.
much.
I love that about you. Don't change that.
Yeah, I don't. I love doing podcasts and I love like being with people.
Yeah.
But social media and
Good. But
I'm too busy having orgasms.
Yeah, you're too busy having orgasms. Exactly.
with all my lovers.
I love that. Oh my God. Okay. Bye, everybody.